Dr. Sarah Chun floated in the observation deck of the International Space Station, her coffee mug drifting beside her as she stared out at Earth below. The morning had started like any other. Tuesday, in 2157, she was reviewing data from the Mars colonies when the first shadow appeared. "Sarah, are you seeing this?" called Commander Rodriguez from the control room. His voice carried a mix of excitement and worry. Sarah pushed herself toward the main viewport and gasped. Massive ships were emerging from what looked like tears in space itself. The vessels were enormous, each one longer than 10 city blocks. They had a dark, gothic design with sharp edges and twisted metal that looked like it was meant to scare people. Red lights pulsed along their hulls like angry heartbeats. "How many?" Sarah asked, pulling up her tablet to start recording. 15 so far. Maybe more coming." Rodriguez was typing frantically at his console. "They're taking positions around Earth, not attacking, just hovering." More ships appeared every few minutes. Each one was different but equally dramatic. Some had giant skull designs carved into their fronts. Others had spikes jutting out at odd angles. All of them glowed with that same red light that made them look like something from a horror movie. Sarah found herself smiling despite the situation. The ships looked exactly like the heavy metal album covers her grandfather used to collect. She had spent hours as a child looking through his old vinyl records, laughing at the over-the-top artwork of demons and skulls and dark castles floating in space. "They're broadcasting something," Rodriguez called out. "Audio and visual. Should I put it on the main screen?" "Do it," Sarah said, floating closer to get a better view. The screen flickered and then filled with the image of what was clearly meant to be a throne room. Everything was black marble with red veins running through it. Torches burned in holders shaped like screaming faces. Organ music played in the background, deep and ominous. Sarah had to bite her lip to keep from laughing. A figure stepped into view, and Sarah's eyes went wide. The being was clearly not human, but it was trying very hard to look scary. It stood about 7 feet tall, wearing armor covered in skulls and spikes. Its face was pale blue with red eyes, and it had small horns growing from its forehead. A long black cape dragged behind it as it walked. "People of Earth," the figure said in a voice that echoed dramatically. "I am Emperor Vestal the Terrible, master of 1,000 worlds, bringer of eternal darkness, and lord of the Galactic Empire." Sarah snorted and quickly covered her mouth. Rodriguez shot her a questioning look, but she waved for him to keep watching. The Emperor continued his speech, gesturing wildly with his arms. "For too long, your world has remained hidden from our glory. But now, the time has come for Earth to kneel before the might of our empire. You will serve us, or you will face the consequences of defying our power." Behind the Emperor, more aliens appeared. They were all trying to look menacing, with various combinations of horns, fangs, and dark clothing. Some carried weapons that looked like they were designed more for show than for actual fighting. Others held banners with skulls and other scary symbols. "You have one Earth day to surrender completely," the Emperor declared. "Send your leaders to our flagship, the Dominion of Eternal Suffering. They will bow before us and accept the terms of your submission. Resistance is futile. Defiance will bring only pain and sorrow." The screen went dark, and the organ music faded away. Rodriguez and Sarah floated in silence for a moment. Then Sarah burst out laughing. "Sarah, what's wrong with you?" Rodriguez asked, looking shocked. "We just got invaded by aliens." "Did you see that?" Sarah gasped between laughs. "The skulls? The dramatic music? The name Dominion of Eternal Suffering? Come on, Rodriguez. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. They have massive ships with weapons pointed at our planet. They have massive ships with glow sticks and Halloween decorations." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. I've seen more convincing villains at comic book conventions. Rodriguez pulled up the recording and played it again. This time, he started to see what Sarah meant. The Emperor's armor looked like plastic when the light hit it wrong. The throne room set wobbled slightly when anyone walked past it. One of the alien minions in the background had what looked suspiciously like a fake beard glued to his chin. "Oh my God," Rodriguez said slowly. "Is that alien wearing a wig?" Sarah pointed at the screen. "And look at those weapons. They're just metal tubes with LED lights stuck on them. My nephew could make better props in his garage." Down on Earth, similar reactions were happening everywhere the broadcast had been seen. In Mumbai, a teenager named Priya was watching with her family when the Emperor made his dramatic entrance. She couldn't help herself. "Dad, is this some kind of joke?" she asked. "They look like they're filming a really bad movie." Her father frowned at the screen. "I think they're serious, Beta." "Serious about what? Looking ridiculous?" Priya laughed. "That guy's cape is dragging on the floor. Doesn't he know that's a tripping hazard?" Similar conversations were happening in living rooms, offices, and schools across the planet. Children pointed and giggled at the scary aliens. Teenagers made memes faster than governments could hold emergency meetings. Adults tried to take the situation seriously, but kept finding themselves distracted by how much the invaders looked like they were playing dress-up. Back on the space station, Sarah was reviewing the technical specifications her equipment had gathered about the alien ships. "Rodriguez, look at this," she said, pulling up a detailed scan. "Their hull composition is mostly iron and carbon steel. That's ancient by our standards. And their energy readings are off the charts, but not in a good way. They're incredibly inefficient." What does that mean? It means they're using about 10 times more power than they need to do anything. It's like they built their ships to be as flashy as possible instead of actually functional. Rodriguez shook his head. "So we're being invaded by aliens who are really bad at building spaceships?" "Apparently." Sarah grinned. "This is going to be interesting." As reports came in from around the world, it became clear that humanity's first reaction to contact with an alien empire was not fear or wonder or excitement. It was laughter. Pure, helpless, uncontrollable laughter at what appeared to be the universe's most over-the-top theatrical production. The Galactic Empire had finally found Earth. They just hadn't expected Earth to find them so amusing. Ambassador Maria Santos straightened her formal diplomatic uniform as the shuttle approached the alien flagship. She had been chosen to lead Earth's first diplomatic mission to an alien species, and she was determined to make a good impression. Behind her sat Dr. Chun, still barely containing her amusement, and General Morrison, who looked like he expected to be tortured any moment. "Remember," Maria said, "no matter how strange they seem, we need to treat them with respect. This is the most important moment in human history." "Right," Dr. Chen said, biting back a smile. "Complete respect for the dominion of eternal suffering." The shuttle bay doors opened with what could only be described as unnecessary drama. Fog machines filled the air with thick mist. Red lights flashed in complex patterns, and what sounded like a full orchestra played ominous music from hidden speakers. Tall figures in black robes stood in formation, holding staffs topped with glowing skulls. "Welcome, humans," one of the robed figures intoned. "To your doom." General Morrison's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, but Dr. Chun had to cover her mouth to stifle a giggle. The alien's staff of power was clearly just a stick with a plastic skull that had battery-powered LED lights inside it as they walked through the ship's corridors. Maria tried to maintain her diplomatic composure, but it was getting harder by the minute. The walls were painted black with fake stone textures that looked like something from a haunted house. Speakers hidden in the ceiling played sounds of distant screaming, howling wind, and chains rattling. Is that elevator music? Dr. Chun whispered, pointing to a slightly too cheerful melody playing underneath the spooky sounds. I think so, Maria whispered back. They were led to the throne room, which was even more ridiculous in person than it had appeared on the broadcast. The throne itself was made of what looked like plastic bones hot glued together. Fake torches flickered with orange LED lights. The floor was covered in a carpet that had been spray-painted to look like cracked stone. Emperor Vexthal sat on his throne, trying to look menacing. Up close, his costume was even more obviously fake. His horns were clearly glued on, and Maria could see the seam where his rubber mask met his real skin underneath. So, the Emperor said, his voice echoing through speakers that made him sound like he was talking through a megaphone in a bathroom. You have come to surrender your planet. Actually, Maria said diplomatically, we've come to establish peaceful relations between our species. The Emperor laughed, but it sounded forced and practiced. Peace? There is no peace in the galaxy. Only the strong and the weak. Only masters and slaves. Dr. Chun raised her hand like she was in school. Excuse me, Your Imperial Majesty, but could you tell us about your empire? How long have you been conquering worlds? The Emperor puffed up proudly. For over 3,000 years, we have brought civilization to the barbaric worlds of the galaxy. We have conquered over 500 planets. Wow, Dr. Chen said with genuine curiosity. That's a long time. What's the average technology level of the species you've conquered? The Emperor looked confused. Technology level? You know, their scientific advancement. Spaceflight, computers, that sort of thing. We bring them the gift of advancement through service to us, the Emperor said, clearly not understanding the question. General Morrison leaned forward. Your Majesty, could you show us some of your advanced weapons? We'd like to understand your military capabilities. The Emperor's eyes lit up. Yes, guards, bring the sword of infinite pain. 2 guards rushed forward, carrying what was obviously a regular metal sword painted black with red stripes. One of them accidentally dropped it, and it clanged on the floor like any normal piece of metal. This blade, the Emperor announced dramatically, can cut through any armor. Maria examined the sword politely. It was clearly just a decorative piece, maybe something that would be sold at a medieval fair. The cutting edge was rounded and dull. Very impressive, she said diplomatically. What about your starship weapons? Let me show you the Chamber of Infinite Torment. The Emperor stood up dramatically, his cape getting caught on his throne. After some awkward untangling, he led them to another room. The Chamber of Infinite Torment looked exactly like the fetish dungeons Dr. Chun had seen in documentaries about human sexuality. There were chains hanging from the ceiling, leather straps attached to metal frames, and various mechanical devices that looked more like exercise equipment than torture devices. Here, the Emperor said proudly, we break the spirits of those who defy us. Dr. Chun walked over to one of the devices and examined it closely. This is interesting engineering. How does it work? Well, the victim is strapped in here, the Emperor demonstrated eagerly, and then this part moves back and forth, creating maximum discomfort. Like a massage chair? Dr. Chun asked. A what? Nothing, sorry. Continue. The tour continued with the Emperor showing off more of his ship's fearsome features. The Pit of Endless Despair turned out to be a room painted black with some dry ice for fog effects. The Arsenal of Destruction contained weapons that looked like they had been built by someone who had heard about guns secondhand but never actually seen one. During the formal dinner, things got even more surreal. The aliens performed what they called their ritual of dominance, which involved them drinking from skull-shaped cups and making dramatic toasts about conquest and suffering, to the crushing of our enemies. Emperor Vexthal declared, raising his cup. Cheers, Maria said politely, taking a sip of her drink. It tasted like beet juice. Is this, Dr. Chun started to ask? The blood of our fallen foes, the Emperor announced proudly. Right, Dr. Chun nodded. It's quite sweet. Do you add sugar? The Emperor looked confused again. Sugar? After dinner, the Emperor pulled Maria aside for a private conversation. His dramatic voice dropped to a normal speaking tone, which somehow made his rubber mask look even more ridiculous. Ambassador Santos, he said, I hope your people understand the seriousness of their situation. Many worlds have tried to resist us, and they have all fallen to our might. Of course, Your Majesty. Could you tell me about some of these worlds? What were they like before you conquered them? The Emperor's chest swelled with pride. There was the savage world of Kethmer. They rode beasts and fought with metal sticks. We showed them our ships, and they immediately surrendered. Metal sticks? Swords, I think they called them. Very primitive. And the water dwellers of Aquanos. They had learned to make fire, but they fled in terror when they saw our vessel's flames. Maria's diplomatic training kicked in. These species were in their medieval periods when you encountered them. Medieval? Pre-industrial. Before they had modern technology. Oh, yes. Most species are quite backward when we find them. That's why they need our guidance. Maria began to understand. The Galactic Empire had been going around the galaxy, finding species in their equivalent of Earth's Middle Ages, and intimidating them with what amounted to fireworks and costume parties. As the humans prepared to leave, Emperor Vexthal made one final dramatic gesture. He threw off his cape with a flourish, revealing what he clearly thought was his true, terrifying form. Dr. Chun started clapping. Oh, that's fantastic. The attention to detail is amazing. Did you make the prosthetics yourself? The Emperor stood there, apparently expecting screams of terror, as Dr. Chun examined his costume with professional interest. The articulation on the extra arms is really smooth. Are those servos or cables? Aye. What? And the skin texture. It looks so real. You must have spent months on this. General Morrison whispered to Maria. I think we need to have a very different conversation with our new friends. As they returned to their shuttle, Maria realized that humanity had just made first contact with the galaxy's most dedicated cosplay group. The question now was whether they should laugh or feel sorry for them. Dr. Chun, of course, was still laughing. Emperor Vexthal paced angrily in his throne room, his cape swishing dramatically behind him. The meeting with the humans had not gone as planned. Instead of cowering in fear, they had looked at him like he was some kind of entertainment. One of them had even asked where he bought his costume. My lord, said his chief advisor, General Morduk the Destroyer, the humans do not seem to understand the gravity of their situation. No, the Emperor agreed, adjusting his plastic horns. They lack proper respect. We must demonstrate our power more clearly. Shall we deploy the planet destroyer, my lord? The Emperor's red contact lenses gleamed with what he hoped was menace. Yes, target their moon. Once they see what our ultimate weapon can do, they will beg for mercy. On Earth, the news networks were having a field day. Social media was flooded with memes about the scary alien empire. Someone had already created a remix of the Emperor's speech with dance music. A group of college students had built their own version of the alien throne using cardboard and Christmas lights. Dr. Chun was in her lab, analyzing the technical readings from their visit to the alien ship. The more she studied the data, the more amazed she became. Rodriguez, come look at this, she called to her colleague. Their fusion reactors are incredibly primitive. They're barely more advanced than our first experimental models from 50 years ago. Are you sure? Rodriguez asked, looking over her shoulder at the data. Positive? and their computers are running on something that looks like quantum processors, but they're so basic that my laptop has more processing power. Commander Harrison walked in, looking grim. Chun, we're getting reports from the lunar monitoring station. The aliens are positioning some kind of weapon near the moon. Dr. Chun pulled up the visual feed from the moon base. A massive alien ship was indeed moving into position, and something was extending from its front like a giant gun barrel. They're going to attack the moon, Harrison said. We need to evacuate the base. Wait, Dr. Chun said, studying the readings from the alien weapon. Look at this energy signature. It's not a planet destroyer. It's just a really big plasma cutter. A what? Plasma cutter. We use them for industrial mining. This one is scaled up, but it's the same basic technology. On the alien flagship, Emperor Vexthal stood on his bridge, surrounded by his officers in their dramatic black uniforms. The bridge itself looked like it had been designed by someone who had only heard descriptions of spaceship control rooms. Buttons were scattered randomly across surfaces. Screens flickered with unnecessary animations, and everything was painted black with red trim. Charging the planet destroyer, announced the weapons officer, whose title was Master of Infinite Destruction, despite the fact that he was mostly just a technician. Excellent, the Emperor said, rubbing his hands together gleefully. Once the humans see their moon destroyed, they will understand that resistance is futile. Back on Earth, the lunar monitoring station was broadcasting live video of the alien ship. The weapon was glowing with an impressive red light, and dramatic music was somehow being transmitted along with the visual feed. Are they playing a soundtrack to their own attack? Dr. Chun asked in disbelief. The alien weapon fired, sending a brilliant red beam toward the moon's surface. The beam struck the moon and began burning a hole through the rock. It was certainly dramatic, with lots of sparks and glowing debris, but Dr. Chun was watching the power readings with growing amusement. That's it? She said. They're just drilling a hole. The alien weapon worked for about 10 minutes, cutting a perfectly circular tunnel about 100 meters deep into the moon's surface. When it finished, the Emperor's voice boomed across all human communication channels. Humans of Earth, you have seen our power. Your moon has felt the touch of our ultimate weapon. Surrender now, or your planet will be next. There was a moment of silence. Then Dr. Chun activated the emergency broadcast system. Excuse me, she said politely. Is that it? The Emperor's voice faltered. What do you mean? Is that it? You made a hole in the moon. Our mining crews do that every Tuesday. Actually, they could have done the same job in about half the time with standard equipment. On the alien bridge, confused murmuring broke out among the crew. This was not the reaction they were expecting. That was our ultimate weapon. The Emperor protested. Your ultimate weapon is a plasma cutter with fancy lights, Dr. Chun replied. We have thousands of them. Would you like to buy some better ones? Our latest models are much more efficient. General Morrison came on the channel. Dr. Chun is right. If you want to mine the moon, we can set you up with some proper equipment. That thing you're using is really wasteful. The Emperor looked around his bridge in confusion. His officers were staring at their instruments, double-checking the readings from their ultimate weapon. Sir, whispered the Master of Infinite Destruction. They're right. Our weapon used about 10 times more energy than necessary to create that hole. What? The Emperor hissed. And according to their broadcasts, they have portable versions that could do the same job faster. Dr. Chun's voice came through the speakers again, cheerfully helpful. If you're interested, I can send you some technical specifications. You might also want to upgrade your power systems. We noticed you're running very inefficient fusion reactors. The Emperor felt something he had never experienced before. Embarrassment. For 3,000 years, The Galactic Empire had been using their advanced technology to intimidate primitive civilizations. But these humans were treating their ultimate weapons like outdated tools. "Perhaps," the Emperor said slowly, "we could arrange a technical exchange." "Of course," Dr. Chun replied enthusiastically. "We'd love to learn about your technology too. That dramatic lighting system you have is really impressive. Very theatrical." On Earth, the mood had shifted from amusement to something approaching sympathy. Social media was now full of posts offering to help the aliens upgrade their equipment. Someone had started a crowdfunding campaign to buy the Empire some decent computers. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species that had been conquered by the Empire were watching the human broadcasts with growing confusion. On the water world of Aquanos, the fish-like inhabitants gathered around their primitive communication devices. "Did the humans just offer to sell the Empire better weapons?" asked Elder Fintuk. "I think so," replied his assistant. "They don't seem afraid at all. But the Empire has the planet Destroyer. We saw what it did to the moon. The humans called it a mining tool." Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. Species that had surrendered to the Empire centuries ago were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. If the Empire's ultimate weapon was just a big drill, what did that say about all their other scary technology? Back on the Imperial flagship, Emperor Vexthal was having a crisis of confidence. For his entire life, he had believed that the Empire was the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had conquered world after world with their superior technology and intimidating presence. But these humans were laughing at them. Not just laughing, but offering to help them improve. "Sir," said General Mordak quietly, "what are your orders?" The Emperor looked at his reflection in the polished black surface of his throne. His rubber mask looked ridiculous in the harsh bridge lighting. His plastic horns were slightly crooked. His armor of infinite power was clearly just painted metal with fake skulls glued on. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Empire was not the most advanced civilization in the room. And instead of being conquered or destroyed, they were being offered technical support. "Sir?" General Mordak asked again. The Emperor sighed, a sound that was both defeated and somehow relieved. "Contact the humans. Tell them we accept their offer of technical assistance." As news of the Empire's surrender spread across Earth, the reaction was not celebration, but something much more unusual, a planet-wide desire to help. Humans had always been good at finding the underdog in any situation, and somehow, the terrifying Galactic Empire had become the galaxy's most misguided theater troupe. Dr. Chen was already making plans for the biggest technology transfer in human history. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she was beginning to wonder what other terrifying empires might be out there, intimidating primitive worlds with disco balls and smoke machines. 3 months after the moon incident, human exploration ships were visiting Empire territories across the galaxy. What they found was far different from what anyone had expected. Dr. Chun led the first team to the water world of Aquanos, where the Empire had supposedly conquered the native fish people 300 years ago. The Aquanos system was beautiful, with 3 blue-green planets orbiting a gentle yellow star. As the human ship approached the main world, they received a nervous communication from the surface. "Unknown vessel," came a burbling voice through their translator. "Are you with the Dark Empire? We have been faithful servants. Please do not punish us." Dr. Chun looked at Captain Williams with surprise. "Dark Empire?" Captain Williams activated the communication system. "This is Captain Williams of the Earthship Discovery. We're not here to punish anyone. We just want to talk." There was a long silence. Then, "You're the humans? The ones who laughed at the Emperor?" "That's us," Dr. Chun said cheerfully. "Could we visit your world?" We'd like to learn about your experiences with the Empire. The fish people, it turned out, were eager to talk. They had lived in fear of the Empire for centuries, but the recent broadcasts from Earth had changed everything. When the human shuttle landed in the main city of Coral Heights, thousands of Aquanians gathered to meet them. Elder Fintak was the leader of the Aquanians, a wise-looking being with silver scales and large, intelligent eyes. He greeted the humans in the traditional Aquanian way, by offering them water blessed by their ocean temples. For 300 years, Elder Fintak explained as they sat in his coral palace, we have lived under the shadow of the Dark Empire. When they first came, we thought they were gods. Their ships blocked out the sun, their voices echoed like thunder, and they wielded fire that could burn even underwater. Dr. Chun made notes on her tablet. What exactly did they do when they arrived? They demonstrated their power by burning away part of our coral reefs. The fire came from the sky, brighter than any light we had ever seen. Our greatest warriors could not fight such magic. Captain Williams frowned. So they attacked your reefs? Yes, in a perfect circle, just like they did to your moon. We thought it was a warning of what they could do to our cities. Dr. Chun and Captain Williams exchanged looks. Elder Fintak, Dr. Chen said gently, did the Empire actually hurt any of your people? The elder looked confused. Hurt us? No, they said they were merciful conquerors. They demanded that we send them tribute and follow their laws, but they never harmed anyone. What kind of tribute? Artistic works, mostly. Sculptures made from coral, songs about their greatness, performances celebrating their victory. They seemed to enjoy our cultural offerings more than anything else. The more they learned, the clearer the picture became. The Empire would arrive at a pre-industrial world, put on a dramatic light show, and demand that the natives worship them and create art in their honor. It was less like a military conquest and more like a cosmic protection racket run by drama students. Their next stop was the desert world of Kethmar, home to the lizard-like Kethians. The Kethian leader, Chieftain Scales of Iron, was a proud warrior who had led the resistance against the Empire for exactly 15 minutes before surrendering. When the Sky Demons came, Scales of Iron explained, gesturing with his scarred hands. They brought ships like flying mountains and voices like the thunder of angry gods. They challenged our greatest warrior to single combat, and? Captain Williams asked. Their champion wore armor that gleamed like stars and carried a sword that burned with inner fire. Our warrior's blade shattered against it like glass against stone. Dr. Chun pulled up a hologram of the Emperor's Sword of Infinite Pain. Did it look like this? Scales of Iron stared at the image. Yes, the legendary Blade of Power. That's a painted steel sword with LED lights, Dr. Chun explained gently. And the armor is plastic with metallic paint. The chieftain was quiet for a long moment. You mean, we surrendered to someone wearing costume jewelry? Basically, yes. The pattern was the same everywhere they went. The Empire would arrive during a civilization's equivalent of medieval times, put on an impressive show with lights and music, and the natives would assume they were dealing with gods or demons. The Empire never actually hurt anyone. They just collected tribute in the form of art and cultural performances. Dr. Chun was beginning to understand something important about the Empire itself. During their fourth world visit, she asked to speak privately with the local imperial administrator, a nervous being called Lord Gloomheart. Lord Gloomheart, she said, can you tell me about the Empire's history? How did it get started? The administrator shifted uncomfortably in his dramatic black robes. Well, our people, the Vextharani, were always lovers of performance and art. Thousands of years ago, we developed space travel and began exploring the galaxy. And then you started conquering worlds? Not exactly, Lord Gloomheart said quietly. At first, we just wanted to share our culture with other species. We created elaborate performances about fictional villains and heroes from our mythology. But when we visited primitive worlds, they thought the performances were real. Yes, they saw our theatrical presentations about the Dark Emperor and his evil empire, and they believed we actually were dark conquerors. They were so frightened that they offered to surrender immediately. Dr. Chun felt a wave of understanding. And you didn't correct them. Lord Gloomheart looked ashamed. At first, we tried to explain it was just theater, but they wouldn't listen. They insisted on treating us like their conquerors. They offered us tribute, built temples to honor us, and created art celebrating our supposed victories. So you just went with it. What else could we do? They seemed happier, believing we were powerful than learning we were just actors. And the art they created was beautiful. Our performances inspired them to create wonderful things. The truth was even more absurd than Dr. Chun had imagined. The Galactic Empire was actually a species of traveling performers who had accidentally convinced half the galaxy that they were evil conquerors. They had been stuck in this role for so long that many of them, like the current emperor, had been born into it and didn't know any other way to live. Lord Gloomheart, Dr. Chen said, "Are you happy living this way?" The administrator was quiet for a long time. To be honest, Dr. Chun, no. None of us are. We love performing, but this isn't really performing anymore. It's just pretending to be something we're not. We can never break character, never relax, never just be ourselves. What if I told you that might be about to change? When Dr. Chen reported her findings back to Earth, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Humanity had always been drawn to underdogs and misunderstood outcasts. And the Vexthorani were the biggest underdogs in galactic history. Social media exploded with sympathy for the poor space actors who had been trapped in their roles for millennia. Artists began creating new works inspired by Vexthorani mythology. Theater groups started planning collaborations, but the most significant reaction came from the conquered worlds themselves. As news of the Empire's true nature spread, species across the galaxy began to question everything they had been told. On Aquinos, Elder Fintic called an emergency council meeting. "If the Empire are just performers," he said, "why have we been limiting our own development for 3 centuries? "They told us that advancement leads to evil," replied one of the council members. "They said we must stay simple to avoid corruption. But the humans are advanced, and they're trying to help everyone." Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. The Empire's greatest crime was not conquest, but convincing entire civilizations to stop growing and learning. They had kept the galaxy in artificial stagnation for thousands of years, not through force, but through fear of becoming corrupted by advancement. As Dr. Chun's ship headed back to Earth, she received a private message from Emperor Vexthol himself. His voice was different this time, quieter and less dramatic. "Dr. Chun," he said, "I have a confession to make. I'm tired. So very tired of being the villain. When I was young, my father told me that our people were the most feared conquerors in the galaxy, and I was proud. But now I wonder if we've all been living a lie for so long that we forgot who we really are." "Your Majesty," Dr. Chun replied, "would you be interested in learning who you really are again?" Yes, I would like that very much." As the human ship jumped back to Earth, Dr. Chun was already forming plans for the most ambitious cultural exchange project in galactic history. It was time to help the galaxy's most misunderstood villains remember how to be themselves again. 6 months later, Earth was buzzing with activity unlike anything in human history. Representatives from over 100 worlds had gathered for the first Galactic Cultural Exchange Summit. The event was being held in New Geneva, where hastily constructed amphitheaters and performance spaces dotted the landscape like Colorful flowers. Dr. Chun stood on the main stage, looking out at the most diverse audience ever assembled. There were the fish-like Aquanians in their mobile water suits, the proud lizard Kethians with their colorful scales gleaming, the insect-like hive minds clicking their mandibles in excitement, and dozens of other species that had spent centuries living in fear of advancement. "Friends," Dr. Chen began, her voice carried by translators to every species present, "we are here today to celebrate something that has been missing from our galaxy for too long: the freedom to be ourselves." In the front row, Emperor Vexthil sat nervously. He was still wearing elaborate clothing, but it was different now. Instead of fake skulls and spikes, his outfit was covered in beautiful artistic designs that told stories of his people's real history. His plastic horns had been replaced with an elegant crown that looked like flowing water frozen in time. "Your Imperial Majesty," Dr. Chun said, smiling at him, "would you like to tell everyone about your people's true heritage?" Vexthil stood slowly. For the first time in his life, he spoke without the dramatic, echoing voice effects and thunderous background music. "My people," he said in his natural voice, which was actually quite pleasant, "are the Vextharani. We are artists, storytellers, and performers. For thousands of years before we left our homeworld, we created elaborate dramas about heroes and villains, love and loss, triumph and tragedy." The audience listened intently as he continued. "When we first traveled to the stars, we wanted to share our stories with the galaxy. But we made a terrible mistake. We presented our fictional tales as if they were real, and instead of entertaining people, we frightened them." Elder Fintok raised a flippered hand. "But why did you continue for so long?" Vexthil looked ashamed. "Because we had forgotten how to be anything else. Generation after generation, we taught our children to play the role of conquerors. We lost touch with our true selves." Dr. Chun stepped forward. "But that changes today. Thanks to all of you, we're going to help the Vextharani remember who they really are. And in return, they're going to help all of us discover something wonderful." The first performance began that afternoon. The Vextharani had spent weeks preparing a presentation of their traditional mythology, but this time, they made it clear it was a story, not reality. The tale was about a hero's journey through the cosmos, facing challenges and learning about friendship along the way. The audience was mesmerized. The Vextharani were incredible performers. Their costumes were works of art, their voices were trained to perfection, and their special effects were dazzling, even when everyone knew they were just tricks. When the performance ended, the entire amphitheater erupted in applause. Chieftain Scales of Iron was on his feet, clapping his clawed hands enthusiastically. "Magnificent!" he roared. "We want to learn how to do this." That was exactly what Dr. Chun had been hoping to hear. Over the next few days, the summit became a whirlwind of cultural exchange. The Vextharani taught other species about theater, music, and visual arts. In return, they learned about the unique cultures that had been suppressed for centuries under their accidental rule. The Aquanians shared their underwater sculpture techniques, creating breathing coral formations that told stories through color and movement. The Kethians demonstrated their traditional war dances, which transformed into powerful dramatic performances when combined with Vextharani staging techniques. The hive minds, who communicated through complex chemical signals, learned to create olfactory symphonies that could tell entire stories through scent alone. Other species contributed their own art forms: crystal singing, gravity painting, genetic poetry, and dozens of creative expressions that have been forgotten or forbidden. Emperor Vexthil found himself busier than he had ever been. But for the first time in his life, he was truly happy. Instead of sitting on a fake throne giving orders, he was working with other artists to create new forms of entertainment that had never existed before. Dr. Chung, he said one evening as they watched a group of young beings from different worlds collaborating on a multi-species dance. I have a proposal. Oh? The Galactic Empire is officially disbanded as of today, but we would like to create something new in its place. The Galactic Arts Collective. Dr. Chung grinned. I like the sound of that. We want to take our ships and travel the galaxy again, but this time as entertainers, not conquerors. We want to bring real joy to worlds that have been afraid to dream for centuries. The idea was approved unanimously by every species at the summit. The former Imperial fleet was retrofitted with proper stages, concert halls, and art galleries. The Dominion of Eternal Suffering was renamed the Starlight Theater and its torture. Chambers became dressing rooms and rehearsal spaces. But the most important change was what happened to the conquered worlds themselves. For the first time in centuries, species across the galaxy began to advance again. Without the fear that technology and progress would corrupt them, they threw themselves into learning and growing. The Aquanians developed new underwater cities that were both functional and beautiful. The Kethians invented fusion-powered instruments that could create music audible across entire solar systems. The hive minds began experimenting with biotechnology that could grow buildings and art pieces at the same time. Earth became the unofficial headquarters of this galactic renaissance. Human universities started offering courses in alien art forms. Alien students came to Earth to study human concepts like comedy, satire, and improvisation. Dr. Chun often found herself standing on her old observation deck on the space station. But now, instead of looking down at one world, she was coordinating with hundreds. The galaxy had become a vast network of artists, scientists, and dreamers, all inspired by the simple human reaction of laughing at something that was supposed to be scary. 1 year after the summit, the first Grand Galactic Festival took place. It was held simultaneously on 50 different worlds, with performances being broadcast across the galaxy. Emperor Vexthul, now calling himself Director Vex, took the stage on Earth for the opening ceremony. 1 year ago, he said, his voice carrying warmth instead of artificial menace, I stood before you trying to inspire fear. Today, I hope to inspire joy. The performance that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It told the story of the Empire's transformation from accidental tyrants to willing entertainers. But more than that, it celebrated the awakening of an entire galaxy that had learned to dream again. As the final song ended and fireworks painted the sky in colors that had never existed before, human and alien artists worked together. Dr. Chun felt a deep satisfaction. Humanity had given the galaxy something more valuable than technology or military might. They had given them the courage to laugh at their fears and the permission to be themselves. In the audience, beings from 100 worlds were on their feet, applauding not just the performance, but their own freedom to enjoy it. Children of different species played together, no longer bound by ancient fears of corruption or conquest. And somewhere in the crowd, Emperor Vexthul was crying tears of joy, finally free to be the artist he had always been meant to be. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best way to defeat your enemies is to help them remember who they really are. And sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe is simply the courage to laugh when something tries to make you afraid. As the festival continued into the night, with music and laughter echoing across a dozen worlds, Dr. Chun realized that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization would not be recorded in history books as a conquest or discovery. It would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned how to smile again.